What's going on, Sky fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Sky Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Sky related, maybe even everything WNBA related when it's all said and done as I continue to build out this platform. That's just me talking a little stuff. But on today's episode, we got two Sky games, one against the Sparks, one against the Dallas Wings to review and go over what happened in those games. We're also going to be talking about Sue Bird and her newest record. Kelsey Plum gets a 2-year contract extension and the WNBA Power Rankings. We'll get into all that and more right after our intro.
Welcome to Chicago Sky Central, and here's your host, Haize.
All right, Sky fans. So first up, we got to go around the WNBA for the news around there. And the Mystics coach Mike Thibault, no relation to Tom Thibodeau. Oh, it's not the same name. Nonetheless, we're last names. He came under a little fire the other day in which he talked about after the Lynx experienced, some issues with their flight. I'm going to read the quote here. He says, "I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about it on Twitter. It happens to every team, and I get it. Every team would like to get in feeling fully refreshed, but they got here last night. They didn't play yesterday. I know it's a long day, but everyone goes through that." And then we have close to a sellout today, and it's not like they were arriving this morning. I know it was a long travel day. We've all had them. We really weren't in position to accommodate them unless there was much more mitigating circumstance than there is right now. And that last quote is after the WNBA contacted the Mystics and asked if they were potentially open to moving the game to later on Sunday. But they declined that. Now, this is an ongoing issue with the WNBA. As most people know, if you follow the WNBA, is that they don't charter flights. They do commercial flights. And the Lynx had issues with their flight on Saturday when they didn't make it to Washington instead of midnight. And they had a game that played 3 p.m. So that's where this comes from. Now, we all know the issues with the WNBA with their commercial flights. It happened to the Sky earlier in the season. It's happened to the Aces. It's happened to every team. And to Mike Thibault's point, it does happen to every single team. And I think that's a bigger ongoing issue. But in the WNBA, and hopefully one that they look to fix. As we know viewership around the WNBA is rising. Hopefully revenue goes up. The WNBA is still operating as an overall loss as far as revenue. But hopefully this does get fixed. Now, I think the biggest thing why you heard pushback on this is that you go through it. So somebody would have heard more sympathy rather than use it as a time to really kind of push down on another team. Could have said, "Hey, look, this is an issue that we all go through. Hopefully, as the league continues to improve, we decide to do that." But it's just one of those things that seemed insensitive. Yes, every WNBA team does go through it, but it doesn't make it any better. And I don't think any professional athlete should really be going through this. I think, that's just my opinion. Again, I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not there for scheduling fights and the money that goes into it, but it really does suck that these professional athletes go through this, and it's such a common thing that they even had the option to say, "Hey, let's go ahead and push back," and which goes on to talk about more about how the WNBA airs games. So, overall, I kind of understand where the coach was coming from in this case, but I do think it was a little bit insensitive, or insensitive, I guess is the better word. In this case, let me know what you guys think about it down below. But let's move on to better and more positive news. Sue Bird had got her 711th career steal and is now third all time on the career steals list. Shout out to Sue Bird, who's having her last season. She's doing her farewell tour. And this shout out to her for continuing to pass and break records. We know what a great she is in this game, what a steward she is for the game. And Sue Bird deserves it all. And, shout out to her for that accomplishment in what is a great and should be a Hall of Fame career, hands down. Now, next up, Kelsey Plum gets a 2-year contract extension from the Aces. She was set to be a free agent at the end of the season. She's having probably her best statistical season overall. It was quite a few slow years for Kelsey Plum as she first came into the WNBA, and this is why you invest in your players, you build your players, you let them come up, because she is now one of the best players in the WNBA and deserves that contract extension all and for whatever it's worth. Now, they did not disclose details of that contract extension, at least not in my research, so I'm not able to go over that as far as what her pay is going to be, but she deserves an extension. I'm honestly surprised that it's only for 2 years, but shout out to Kelsey Plum for doing her thing. Now, before we get into the WNBA Power Rankings, which we try to do every week on our Monday episodes, is that it was a quiet WNBA trade deadline. Not any of the deals that were proposed or expected to happen gone. Skylar's still on the Mercury. Nothing happened that some people thought may go down. And what does that say about this season in the WNBA is that it's going to be a heck of a season when we get to the playoff. We're heading to the playoffs right now. Sky are all but for certain to have a playoff spot, as most teams are, but it's going to be very interesting playoffs. And I think the fact that we didn't see any movement really at the trade deadline just goes to show, like, it's probably going to be a very eventful offseason for the WNBA this offseason, which, considering it's my first one to have in this show, I'm appreciative of an active WNBA season. I would have appreciated an active trade deadline, but the WNBA trade deadline goes down without really any deals, especially no marquee deals. But let's get into the power rankings before we start talking about the Chicago Sky's 2 games that we've missed in episodes so far. The Chicago Sky are still number 1. They went 3-0 last week, so they weren't going to move. They are now 9-16 on the season. Our depth has helped us all season maintain this, and we're going to talk about that depth when we get into some of the games and some of the like a game that Rebekah Gardner had, for example. But Chicago Sky, well-deserved, number 1, best team in the WNBA. I said it. It's going to be a very interesting playoffs for the Chicago Sky, and one that I hope we do not see the Chicago Sky get upset at all in the playoffs. But the Las Vegas Aces, who were down to number 5 last week, moved back up to number 2. They got to pick me up right after the All-Star game. 2 wins against New York and Connecticut. They had lost 5 of their last 7 before then, so this pushed them back up to number 2 in the WNBA power rankings at 18-7 over the course of the season. We're gearing towards and preparing in 9 days. Well, I think 9. It's either 9 or 8 days. We got the WNBA Commissioner's Cup, where it's going to be the Aces versus the Chicago Sky. Can't wait for that game. But that pushes the Seattle Storm back down to number 3. They were number 2 last week. They're back down. They had a 2-0 week, again, with wins over Dallas and Indiana. But they did drop 1 single spot. That's because the Aces are right back playing good basketball. Aces are still top heavy, but they get number 3. Number 4 is the Connecticut Sun, who were number 3 last week. And that makes sense. With the Aces moving back up to number 2, everybody kind of moves down, and that leaves the Washington Mystics back down to number 5, being number 4 in the previous week. They went 2-1 in the past week, and that rounds out your top 5 in the WNBA power rankings. The Atlanta Dream, Dallas Wings, Minnesota Lynx, Phoenix Mercury, and Los Angeles Sparks round out that top 10 in the WNBA power rankings. But let's go ahead and talk about our Chicago Sky and a couple of the games that we did not get to review and have reactions to immediately afterwards. So first up, the Chicago Sky beat the Los Angeles Sparks without Liz Cambridge. Let's be clear on that. She was not on the court. She was actually out due to health and safety protocols. But in this game, Candace Parker dropped a goose egg with 0 points on 0 for 11 shooting, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. This was immediately after her 30-point performance. So following up with a goose egg. And then overall, in the starting lineup, we did not have the usual output that we see from our starters in this game. Kahleah Copper in this game, only 12 points, 5 for 8 from the field in this game. She did have 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers in this game, and then 11 points from Quickly in this game, 4 for 9 from the field, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. Meesseman with 9 points as well, and then Sloot had 5 points. Again, very cold shooting night overall for the Chicago Sky in this game. They went 33 of 68 overall from the field for 48% of their shots, only 8 for 19 from the three-point range, good for 42%. But this game, the story that you're going to hear from this game is Rebekah Gardner leading, our rookie, our 30-year-old rookie, leading the Chicago Sky in scoring, coming off the bench in 8 of 11. She had 18 points in this game, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. And again, Azurá Stevens with 14 on 6 of 7 shooting overall from the field. The Chicago Sky's depth is what won them this game. Having that depth, the depth that I've talked about so frequently, is what won them this game. Now, Nneka in this game did not have the game that I thought she was going to have. 7 for 20 for shooting from the field, 16 points from her. But again, the Sparks starters completely outplayed as far as output the Chicago Sky starters in this game. It was the bench that was the differentiating factor for the Chicago Sky in this game. Over 40 points coming off the bench. Dana Evans chipping in as well. 9 points in 17 minutes off the bench for the Chicago Sky. The depth, the bench is what won this game for the Chicago Sky. Candidly, they ended up winning this game 80-68. In a game, again, they were missing Liz Cambridge, so we understand that. But at the end of the day, the Chicago Sky continue to find ways to win games, kicking up the defensive intensity when needed, having contributions from players that you may not expect when needed. That is the defining factor of championship teams that are able to just find ways to win. And like I've been saying, one of the things I'm gonna say on every episode that I do of this show, the Chicago Sky's depth is what makes them the best team in the WNBA, and there's no better perfect visualization of that than watching this game against the Los Angeles Sparks. The Chicago Sky doing their thing in this game, coming out with the win when their starters just didn't have it like they usually do. But let's get into the game against the Dallas Wings. This is a tale of two games because it was completely flip-flopped, whereas the bench players really won that game for the Chicago Sky. In that game against the Sparks, the Chicago Sky starters, specifically Kahleah Copper, who was just a beast and my favorite WNBA player, came in and balled out this game. In this game, chipping in 23 points on 9 for 16 shooting, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, only 1 turnover. Now, she did have 5 personal fouls, but Copper in this game, just balled out. That's period, point blank, balled out. And then chipping in that, Meesseman with 10 for 14 shooting, 23 points as well, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, flashing her overall control of that game. Those two players had the biggest output, combining for 46 points in this game, in a game where the Chicago Sky only scored 89 points. They beat the Dallas Wings 89-81 in this game. Now, Candace Parker had a much more solid game this game, 5 for 14 shooting, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, having a very solid game. This game, we were missing in this game. Sloot did not play in this game, so the fact that they were able to weather the storm without Sloot playing, and you see what Sloot means to this team when she does not play, but Sloot out this game. Quigley still in this game, 4 for 10 shooting, but had 16 points, 7 for 7 from the free throw line, giving us big output in this game. And Alaman, who started in place of Sloot, which I thought Dana would start in Sloot's absence, but 1 for 3, only 2 points. Azurá Stevens only 6 points off the bench. Rebekah Gardner only 4 points off the bench, and Dana Evans only 2 points off the bench. That means we had 12 points off the bench in this game. The starters are what won the Sky this game against the Dallas Wings. Like I said, a complete flip-flop on that Los Angeles Sparks game. But listen, the Dallas Wings came to play in this game. The Chicago Sky winning the first quarter and the fourth quarter, but losing the middle 2 quarters in this game. It really was a big closeout by the Chicago Sky that won this. They won the fourth quarter 30-16, and that's how they sealed the victory in this. Listen, the Chicago Sky, it may not always be pretty. It may not always be handily, and sometimes they do drop some of those third quarters, but the Chicago Sky always find a way to win, and that's the thing that makes this team special. That's what makes this team so fun to watch, is that even when they are losing, you always have that feeling like, hey, a comeback is coming. A comeback can absolutely come in this game, and they were able to do that. Listen, 2 All-Stars in this game, in Kahleah Copper and Emma Meesseman, had to step up with 23 points each in this game to really pick up the slack in a game that we just did not have it. We just did not have it. Unfortunately, Sloot does have a concussion. We don't know. She is in the league's concussion protocol, so we don't know when she's going to be back. Now, the Sky don't play again until Wednesday of this week, so that gives her some time to recover if she is able to come back and be able to play in the next game. Shout out to her. But if not, again, the depth of the Chicago Sky are what's going to be why they're able to weather the storm through injuries and anything else. Because guess what? We just come out and we ball. The Chicago Sky are the best team in the WNBA. And I know it's a Chicago Sky podcast. You expect that from me. It's going to keep happening. But we do have Seattle coming up on Wednesday, which is on NBA TV. It's another noon game on a Wednesday, which I'm actually starting to enjoy the Chicago Sky having noon games. In those noon Wednesdays game, I think the last couple of all fell on a Wednesday. I appreciate it. It is in Wintrust Arena, so we are at home. So we'll see what we do against the Seattle Storm in that game. We do have games Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday this week. So we have Seattle up next, Dallas again on Friday, and then we got the Liberty on the 23rd. So then we turn around and face them next Friday again on the 29th. But the Chicago Sky show no signs of slowing down. Hopefully Sloot does rest up. She clears that concussion protocol so that we can get her back, because we do need her. But again, the Sky have the depth to weather storms in cases like this, and it's good to see that continued depth. And Rebekah Gardner is I'm buying a Chicago Sky jersey before the beginning of the playoffs, and I was planning on buying a Kahleah Copper jersey for sure because she's my favorite WNBA player. But I'm thinking it's going to be Rebekah Gardner. I'm honestly thinking that. I'll probably get both. I'll still get a Ka jersey. And flip-flop back and forth from them during the playoffs. But that is it for today's episode of Chicago Sky Central. So I will have an episode following the game on Wednesday. It probably won't be a live stream, but I will get an episode up shortly thereafter that game. We'll get an episode up after Friday's game as well. Saturday's game, we'll see. I got some things going on Saturday, so we'll see if I'm able to get an episode up right after that. But that's the week coming up for Chicago Sky Central. Thank you for following the show. As always, you can follow the show at Chicago Sky Pod on every social media platform that we're on. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoSkyCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave us any text and or voicemails, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. Thank you for tuning in to Chicago Sky Central. I'm the host here, Haize. I love you guys, man, and I'll see you guys at least by Wednesday, if not before. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.